Don't miss our latest hobby tutorial on how to paint some dope autumn bases. Spiky bits. What's up, hobby maniacs? I'm Baer, and today we're gonna show you how to paint some really cool looking autumn bases using some realistic dirt mixture colors that I've come up with the new Citadel paint line that came out a few years back. I used to use the Vallejos. Still love the Vallejos, but they're a little bit harder to work with and find at the majority of retailers. So I feel like, hey, if we just use GW paints, well, that helps everybody because most folks have access to the GW paints. And then we're gonna add in a little bit of autumn leaves and some turfs, little topper bits from Army Painter, which are also generally pretty acceptable. These are the Gemini twins for Saint Celestine herself, but we did up all their bases in all of their glory, and it's actually very easy to do. So let's take a look. So texture time it is. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take this normal 32 millimeter base that's completely hollow underneath, just your standard plastic base. And because these models are designed this way, this really leaves us the choice to texture this base or use a resin base. But I feel like this assembly's plastic, so it'll do us well to just build up a base on this plastic base here because we've got the plastic glue locking this down, so hopefully it never breaks up this way right here. So in order to help facilitate that, we could use the GW texture paints they have, but what I prefer actually is some Vallejo pumice stone texture here, which you can see this is the SKU number 599. It's coarse pumice. Crack this bad boy open and you can see that I've already mixed in some other colors into here, and there's some dried stuff that got in the cracks there, so you always want to make sure you try to keep that as clean as possible so that you can get a nice seal and keep it airtight so this doesn't dry out on you. So you're just going to need a little buster brush that you're not too worried about completely and totally utterly ruining over time here. And when you're ready, you just want to put a little water on that and grab out a chunk of the texture here. Grab your model and go to town. Now this is gonna look weird, but you're gonna want to spread it out here on the base itself, and you're gonna want to cover as much area as possible. Now if you see through onto the black, that's okay, don't worry about it, because there will still be texture. Now you can see those chunks of gravel that I have added, which isn't that big of a deal. We're just gonna go through and get a nice even coat all over the whole base. Now that the texture has had a chance to dry, I know it doesn't look like it's dry, but that's actually the texture itself right there showing through to some of the black underneath. We're gonna start the basing process. So we're gonna use these paints right here, Rhinox Hide to Mournfang Brown to Zamzi, with a light dry brush of Zandri and then a little bit of Zamzi back over top of it. So this is kind of our mix right here. So I'm going to crack open this Rhinox Hide. You can hear again I've got the 1/4 inch steel ball bearing in there and give it a nice base coat all over the bottom of this miniature right here. Now if you start to get hungry at this step, it's because that brown is looking like some brownie mix. So you can see here it needs to get dried out a little bit. We're going to put it in front of the hobby stand because you want a nice solid base coat to start dry brushing up from at this point. So we got to wait for that to dry and then come back in and work it up. And now it's time to do some dry brushing. So we're going to grab some Mournfang Brown right here, shake it up, give it a good shake, get it all mixed up, get those good paints right there. That's probably a little too much because we're going to be dry brushing, so I want to get that off of there. And then we're just going to grab our dry brush paper towel, work those paints out of the fibers, just leaving the very tips of the fibers with the very last thing. Sometimes I find it's easier to do it this way, but it's going to thrash your brushes over time. And there we go. For the most part, we've got a nice solid base left on the brush right there, and then we're just going to go in and slowly pull it over and over and over and over again, and over time the highlight is going to show up. Maybe we could have left a little bit more on there, but you start to see the coloration there. We're just going to go through and work it all out. So now you can see all of the detail for the light brown we got off the brush. Again, not helping the brownie situation, still looks like a nice brownie mix right there. Keeping the paint still on the brush right there, we're just going to add in a little Zamzee Desert to our mix. Not a whole lot, we're just going to get in there and dab a little bit onto here. And what it's going to do is it's going to naturally create a mix, a transition of sorts on our brush with a little bit of that original Mornfang. And now we're just going to get in here and dry brush just the very tops here, very lightly going across. And you can see that we've already got the color gradation change in our mix right here. And if you get a little bit on the parchment, that's okay too. Not a big deal, but we're going to go through and nug that out real quick and get that looking sharp. Okay, so there it is. You can see we've done some work there, working up that light brownie layer. Now it's starting to look a little lighter, and we're going to grab some Zamzee Desert base to lighten this whole thing up. Just dabbing a little bit on the brush here and getting it off on the paper. Alright, so you can see now that we've got our brown really coming up rich here. Now I've added a little bit of Zamzee Desert to the brush here. So we're going to definitely go through and some very light strokes here, starting to light up this whole area all together, and it's really going to come through and create that really nice dirt effect that we were going for. Again, don't worry if you get a little bit on the parchment. Dirt is meant to go on the parchment color and not the parchment color vice versa over on the dirt. And I'm going to grab a little bit more Zamzee dust and give it a little bit light, a little bit lighter dry brush here, just going around it really nicely, and that's going to give us that pop of real dirt right there. Now it's time to detail this bad boy out. So we're going to grab some of our Army Painter tufts right here. This is super easy. Just grab some tweezers, kind of figure out a size that you want to go for. We'll go with this right here. You're going to notice that there's a little bit of adhesive back there, and we're just going to dab it in some white Elmer's glue, which we kind of have a little off camera right there. Now you want to be careful when you're doing this because you don't want it to get too much up onto your static or onto your actual grass, so you can just kind of try to come underneath it right there. And there it is. And try not to have as much mess as possible right there. But that's all going to dry out, and it's going to look fine in the long run right there. So we're going to do that a second time here with a smaller tuft. Very easy stuff. Just dab it on down, and we'll just grab a different spot to kind of put it somewhere, trying to be a little random as nature right there. And we'll go with like 2 little spots of grass. Now we're gonna want to accent that, of course, with maybe some autumn flowers or some autumn leaves. So I have a couple laid out here next to, you can see just some little leaves there. Same deal, just gonna dunk them in a little bit of this glue and attach them onto the base itself. Well, if they cooperate, there we go, for a little bit of color. So I'm going to go through and lay those out and come back and take a look at it. So we went in and added in some little bit of color, not too much, a bunch of leaves there, and went in with the tweezers and kind of poofed up the tufts a little bit, tried to pull them out and make them look fuller. Now you can see that the white PVA glue has already started to dry, so that's going to look good. Now the very last thing we have to do is lip the bases with my personal favorite, or my new favorite, the Vallejo Surface Primer 70602. We're just going to grab a, let's see, a big detail brush. I think I got this privateer brush right here, and making sure we got a little bit of water on it. We're just going to go in and lip this base. Now the cool thing about this primer is it's just one coat, one and done, one shot, one kill, whatever you want to call it. Super easy to use. Don't have to do multiple coats, so you can concentrate on getting all the edges here all the way up to the brown and not going over into the brown, getting the bottom. And other than that, there's really no other reason to do multiple coats. And that took like about 2 seconds to actually do. So now our base is completely lipped and it's way more drier than it was a few minutes ago. You can see that the base really came through very well. It's got some great contrast between the leaves and the little tufts right there, as well as the normal dirty kind of, I would say, barren kind of undergrowth kind of look. We'll just go with dirt. Let's just call it dirt and go with that. So that's pretty much it for this one. The base is done. Those are the secrets. Just adding a little bit of autumn leaves. You can get packs of that from either Secret Weapon Minis or some other providers out there, some Army Painter Tufts. And our lineup of paints right here, we went from the brownie color of Rhinox Hide up to Mornfang Brown, over to Zamsi Desert with a mix of Xandri Dust in there to bring it up a little bit. And that's pretty much it. That's our dirt basing mix right there. Now, if you've liked our video features, make sure you follow us here on YouTube and support us over on Patreon to get a monthly shipment of miniatures shipped to your door, as well as we have some quarterly options. There's always some dope promo going on. I think right now it's some free custodies. And head on over to thelongwar.net. That's the home of the battle reports for exclusive content and early access videos. Become a veteran of the Long War today.